recorded. Here we are. This is episode 6, I believe. Is that right? Or 5? Might be 5. I forget. It's the next iteration of our Sinatra journal app project, where we are going through and building a Sinatra application within the according to the project specs of the Sinatra portfolio project here. So what we've got so far is I think everyone here has been on these episodes who's here today, but for anyone watching the video, we have so far built 2 models, user and journal entry. Journal entry belongs to user. User has many journal entries. And thus far, we've created only a user show page. We've created index new and show for journal entries. We have the ability to log in and sign up as users as well. And so that means that we have an application controller with some helper methods, logged in and current user to get the current user. We have the corresponding routes for journal entries that allow us to get the form to create a new journal entry, create a new form, our post journal entries route, and a journal entry show page, which points to our journal entries show.erb. As far as users go, we can basically sign up and sign in. Signing up creates a new user. We do have a user show page. We don't have a user's index page, which we might not have anyway. So let's just kind of run the server and see what this feels like for now and see if we notice anything missing or think about what we want to do next. So I'm going to go to localhost 9393 as my server fires up. And I should see a GET request to / received here, which will turn around and redirect me based on whether or not I'm logged in. If we look at our application controller, we match this route and we check to see if we're logged in. If we are, we're going to go to the current user's show page. Otherwise, we're going to redirect to the welcome page, which will show a link for sign up or sign in. Notice that I ended up at Justin's show page. What does that imply as far as, am I already logged in? Can anyone tell me, based on the fact that I landed on the show page, whether I'm logged in or not?
Yes.
Yeah, I am. I'm definitely logged in. It's been days since I opened this thing, right? I haven't opened up this application for days. I wasn't even running the server. But notice that this is the beauty of sessions. I'm still logged in, which is nice, right? So let's see if I log out. If I log out, I should clear my session and then get redirected back to the welcome page if I'm not mistaken. And we should see the option to log in, to sign up or log in. And we can see everything reflected in our log over here. Get /, then we excuse me, we get users 4 after we've loaded our user from the database. And finally, then I sent the get logout request, which cleared my session and then loaded my welcome page. Okay. So I'm going to log back in. And let's see here. Let's log in as, I think this is one. We'll see. I think I'm a user here, aren't I? Cool. And here I am. So I'm going to create a new journal entry. And let's say today is Tuesday. And it's snowy. I create the entry, and I think I'll get redirected to the entry show page, which just shows the content of the entry. I don't think it's showing much else. That's okay. So this doesn't feel good to me because right now I can log out, I can look at all journal entries or new entry. What if I go to all journal entries? Yeah, okay, get journal entry. So this is a dead link. So I've got some major problems with this application. I feel like I'm at a dead end. I don't ever want to have the user manipulate the URL. Once I look at, I've created a journal entry and I'm looking at it. Where would I want to be able to go from here as a user? What makes sense? I can click on a new entry, but what if I don't want to create a new entry? What if I want to go back and see all my entries? What do we think? What's a good next step here?
Do you need to redirect to the index?
Well, I don't want, right now, I do want to be able to be here at the show page. I think this makes sense, right? But there's a couple things in my opinion that are missing. Suppose I misspelled something here. What might be a nice link for me to see? Add a link to create a new one. I do have a new entry link here. But yeah, edit and delete, right? What if I want to be able to change this thing? Like I've created it. Oh man, I spelled, well, you know what? I actually want to add something. Today is Tuesday and it's snowy. I also want to add that it rained, right? I don't know, I'm just talking about the weather. I'm not too creative this morning. Yeah, how about an edit and a link page? Well, I don't have that functionality yet, so I think that feels like a good next step. Another next step that I'm going to put sort of in the back on the back burner is adding some more navigation, because right now I know my all journal entries link is dead, and I think I'd like to be able to like a button up here or something that links to my home page, sort of back to my own show page, because that feels like I should be able to do that, something like home. All right. So I'm going to add the links first. If I go into this is a journal entries show page. I want to add a couple of links. Okay, I want to add an edit link and a delete link. Delete. Oh my gosh, delete link. Okay. What is an edit link going to look like? Where would what's a RESTful route to load an edit page? First of all, how do I build a link? What HTML element is a link? Is it a div? Is it? Yeah, that's right. It's an anchor tag, an A tag. So, and the href, which Sushi has already supplied in the chat there, the href is going to be journal entries /id/edit. And I want to say edit entry. Now, what's the problem here? What if this is my link? There's what error will we see? We'll see a couple of errors here if I have this link and click on it. I need to actually supply the dynamic piece of the URL here, right? Exactly. So how can I get that? Do I have access to it? I do have access to it. Where do I have access to this ID that I need? Yeah, exactly. My journal entry instance variable right here. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to grab it with interpolation. Oh, that's not the right interpolation, is it? I'm in an ERB file. There we go. Journal entry.id. Cool. And so now if I refresh this page, by the way, does anybody hear any crackling? Please tell me if you do, because in my last video, I ended up with all this crackling sound, which I've never had happen before, and I don't know where it came from. So please let me know if there's any weird feedback that you're hearing. I'll try to correct it, even though I'm not sure what the problem is. Can everyone hear me clearly without any feedback? Okay. All right, cool. So I added in my journal entry ID, which I had available to me here within this instance variable. I could have grabbed it from params as well. Sushi, you mentioned that because on the entry page, I do have params available. However, I think this is a little bit, for some reason, this feels a little more robust. This feels better to me to refer to the object itself that I have in my hand. If I click this link, I should get Sinatra's error saying that it doesn't know this ditty, I imagine, because I don't believe we've built these routes yet. Cool. Sinatra doesn't know this ditty, so it's suggesting that I do something like this. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and go to my journal entries controller. And down here at the bottom, I'm going to add this thing. Get journal entries 6 edit. 6, though, is going to be dynamic, and it represents an ID. And I definitely don't want to just say hello world, but if I wanted to, I could go back, refresh, and make sure that this thing works, and I should then just see hello world listed here once I click this link after it's loaded. There it goes. And there's hello world. Awesome, so we're in business. What's the job of this route? This route should do what? It only has one job. Yeah, and so what should be inside of that? Exactly, this route should send us to edit.erb, and I'll be more specific and I'll say journal entries, edit.erb, which will do what? What will that render? What will that show on the page? Yeah, exactly, an edit form. Okay, a form to edit the journal entry. So let's make that pointer. We do want this to ERB. Wait a minute. What do I want to do? Well, let's just do that first. I'm going to ERB to journal entries edit. Okay. This is a file reference looking in my views folder to a nested folder of journal entries for a file called edit.erb. This doesn't exist yet, so I need to add it. So I'm going to find my inside of app, okay, views, journal entries. I have index, new, and show. I now need edit. Okay, there it is. Just to be clear, or just to test it out, I'm going to say edit form. Edit form goes here. Save that, and save this. And let's see what happens if we refresh the page. I should see edit form goes here now instead of hello world, and there it is. So we have success. And I think it's a good idea to check these links and routes one at a time. That's the way I like to do it, and I do recommend that. As you add feature, test it. Feature, test it. Add functionality, test it. So let's see, I'm going to actually go ahead and I saw Alwino's here, which actually reminded me already to check see if I need to go ahead and add some commits, and I definitely do. I don't care about the changing the database so much, but I do want to add git add app views journal entries edit and add edit.erb. Okay, git add. I'm just going to add the rest. Just say that I created journal entries edit route and link. Cool, I'm going to push those up. If I can type. Okay, so the form. Have I already built a form that represents a journal entry? I have. There's no reason to retype this whole thing, so I'm not gonna. Instead, I'm just going to copy it and paste it. And I'll even copy what I had up here, show page for journal entry. I'm just going to say edit page for journal entry. Okay? Now, there's one more thing though. So right now this is fine, right? If I go to my journal entry number 6 again, this might actually error out, we'll see. But if it does, it's good. Why did I get this error? Does anyone know? This can be a tricky one. It can be really annoying. Some students can get, it's easy to get really frustrated with this error. Can anyone see it right off the bat, what the problem is? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Justin hit the nail on the head. Sinatra differentiates between this route and this route. Okay, so just be aware of that. That if you have a hanging slash when you're debugging, that could be a problem, or if you build it into your route, that could be a problem. So now when I click on this, I should see the form to edit my link, which I wrote today is Tuesday and it's snowy. But this is bad. This is not a good user experience. Does anyone want to explain? Does anyone know why I say that? Why is this bad user experience? If I want to edit an existing journal entry, what if my journal entry is like 3 paragraphs and I only misspelled 1 word? Do I want to have to retype the whole thing? It should show up exactly. It would be better to see the previous data. That's 100% right. Can I do that? Of course I can. Okay. So in my journal entries controller, before I render the form, I want to find my journal entry. Okay. How do I do that? What information do I have here in this route that allows me to find a particular journal entry? Exactly. So journal entry, I'm going to use snake case because that's Ruby convention, equals journal.find. I'm just going to say journal.find. I could use find by. I'll say find because this should be coming from a link. It should be okay. And find just takes a single argument, which represents the ID in the database. And how do I access that ID here on line 34? I can't just say ID, right? How do I get it? How do I pull it from the URL? In who or what data structure is holding it? Params. That's right, today, params. Yep, exactly. Sushi, you're right too. Yes, exactly. Yep, params ID. Okay, so now I'll find the journal entry based on the ID that's supplied within the URL. And as long as somebody doesn't come up and enter some ridiculous number in here, this should work. If I now load the page, though, it doesn't look any different yet. I need to change the form. So if I look at my edit form, what do I change here so that the content that was already there will show up? I think this is just because I need to reload the page. Okay, so how do I actually populate this form with existing data? I could populate the placeholder tag. Yes, I could. The answer is yes. So that's, you know what? I'm actually going to demonstrate that. That's a good thought. I love that thought, and I like that you mentioned that. So I'm going to do that. Placeholder equals, and what would go in here? By the way, Sushi, if I do use placeholder, how do I actually get that information into this place? I have an ERB file, and I have created in my controller an instance variable called @journalEntry that's holding the current journal entry, and then I call ERB with Ruby tags, exactly with ERB tags. So let's do that. At journal, exactly, journalentry.content, journalentry.content. Okay, and let's see what that looks like. This is great. I'm going to click on Edit Entry, and either we'll get that same error as before, or I'll actually see an edit form with some populated data, sort of. Okay, cool, I did get the same error. Name error. Errors are good. Let's figure out what's going on. Excuse me. Journal.
Jerry mentioned in the chat there is in the controller an S missing in the params.
There sure is. You're already, you all are steps and leaps and bounds ahead of me. I love it. So I'm going to try that again after I've fixed params. And I still have a problem. Great. Okay, so let's see what the problem is now. I don't have a class called journal. Notice that this error is rather explicit. Uninitialized constant in journal entries controller journal. Why does this say constant and not method or variable, by the way? Any idea? Does anyone know? It's kind of a very minor thing, but The reason it says constant is because this is capitalized. Exactly, yeah. If I put a lowercase, I should get a slightly different, although very similar error, and it'll say uninitialized variable or method journal for the same or in the same place inside of journal entries controller. Okay. So now I'm actually going to change this to the name of the class, which is journal entry, not just journal. And maybe we will see an edit form. Okay. When you see errors, remember to smile because errors are helpful. So now we see this sort of semi-grayed out text. And today is Tuesday. And let's see, I just wanted to change, like, I wanted to just say today's Tuesday and it's snowy and it rained this morning. Like, that's all I want to add. But can I actually do that? Like, what if I start typing? It gone. Okay. So that's the problem with a placeholder. A placeholder displays to the user information, but it disappears as soon as I start typing. And it also will not, placeholder text will not be populated as the value when I submit this form. So placeholders placeholders are, first of all, awesome. They're great, use them, but it doesn't apply here. It's not the right thing to use here. So we want actually a different HTML attribute than placeholder. What HTML attribute do I want? It's value. Yep, that's right today, it's value. Cool. So now if I refresh this page, once again, I should see the contents of my journal entry now being displayed, and I can change it. Today is Tuesday and it's snowy, and it rained this morning, which made me feel gray or something. I don't know. All right, so now when I submit this and I hit create entry, wait a minute, there's a problem here. If I hit create entry right now, does anyone know what will happen? What would happen if I hit create entry at this moment in time, given that here is the form I have thus far? It would create a brand new record. Sushi, that is exactly right. Why? I need to change the route. Yes, exactly. The action. I need to change the action, and in particular, I also need to change the method. Okay, so I need to change the method. Within a rack-based application, can I just say that? Will that work? This is a rack-based application. So can I just change the method of a form to get a different HTTP verb? Will that work?
This is where you leave it as post and you need to add another input to change the method, right?
That's exactly right. So with rack, I can change this between get and post, but if I want any other HTTP verbs, I have to do something fancy, which I've already set up for, if anyone recalls, I think anyway, if I'm not mistaken. I already have this method here invoked, use rack method override. Okay, and rack method override allows me to change the HTTP verb of a request. That's exactly right with the middleware and the config file. That's exactly right. So what I need to add something here, which is an input. What type does it need to be? Does anyone remember this? It needs to be hidden. That's correct. Oops, hidden. The name needs to be underscore method. And the value is the actual method that I want to use, the HTTP verb, in this case, patch. Why do I want a patch request? Because I'm changing existing information. My action also needs to change because I'm changing not just any information, but I'm changing a particular piece of information. So when I'm going to send a patch request, but not just patch journal entries because that's not enough information. I need one more piece of information so that when I send this request, I can identify the record that's being changed. Okay, I can identify the resource. In this case, I'm going to identify the particular journal entry. What piece of information do I want to pass along? The ID, exactly. And again, we're going to use ERB interpolation. Maybe, if I can get my shortcut there. And again, journal entry.id. Sometimes we'll see people do this. We'll add an edit on the end of there. That will work as long as I build my corresponding route accordingly, but it's unnecessary. Remember, rest tells us that with CRUD actions, we should stick to the smallest amount of characters needed for each route. In this case, the verb along with the type of thing that I'm going to change and some identifier for it is plenty. That's all the information I need. Okay. By the way, one other thing that's bothering me a little bit is I can only read today is Tuesday. I would like to see my entire. I'd really like to see my entire entry here. This is bad. So how can I change this so that I can see the entire entry? Anyone know? What if we change this to a text area? Let's see how that looks different. Is that the wrong one? Let's see. I want a bigger HTML text input. Does anybody know the syntax? If I'm not sure of HTML input, then let's see, text area, rows and columns. It looks like I can specify the number of rows and columns. Let's say, and this is, columns will refer to characters, rows will refer to lines. So let's try this, just for fun. Whoa, I don't want all that. I'm going to copy rows and columns. See if I actually copied it that time. I did. Let's see if that changes, if I refresh the page, if that changes the form a little bit. Well, now I'm a little confused. Uh-oh. No screen share anymore. That was weird. Oh, I think when I changed tabs, I think I actually accidentally tagged my zoom menu there. So this is actually, I'm not sure what the problem is here. I'm seeing, I have an issue where I'd like this text area to be bigger, but it's not getting bigger.
I think you can use the style attribute with width and height of auto.
Okay, just right in line here. What would that look like?
So it's actually, I'll send it quickly through the chat.
Okay. So notice that there are different ways we can adjust HTML attributes. There's kind of a lot actually of ways that we can do that. So Sushi suggested putting an inline style attribute. I can build a CSS file and point to style. I can also write in line, do something like this. So let's see how that changes the form, or if it does. It doesn't. This is kind of annoying. I'm looking at the right one here, content. Oh, this should be for content, not for name, but that doesn't really matter. I am not sure what the problem is here. Does anyone see what my issue is? Because I don't. Clearly this is the right form being rendered. Yeah. I do need my name though. I need the name to be content, otherwise it's not going to show up in my params hash. Oh, it's not it's not a type. It's actually a text area element, excuse me. Not input, but text area. And text areas, let's see if that does it. Text area, hopefully when we submit our params, we'll have to make sure that everything lines up now still. Okay, so now we're seeing this is now getting a little funky. This is definitely not exactly what I want. to be the content value. So I think what I can do is, instead of assigning a value property here, I'm going to close my text area tag. This is, so let's see, close text area. All right, let's see if I line this up. I have an opening tag, close my opener, I put my content, close my text area. Let's see if that did it. Okay, that looks a lot better. Okay, so now I've created this form, and what I'd like to do now, of course, is be able to, instead of create entry, this is going to edit my entry. And what's the problem now? If I say, okay, and it rained, and I click this submission, I should get another little ditty from Sinatra with a different message. Well, the same message, it doesn't know this ditty. But notice that now it says what we're missing is a patch route, which is good. This is a good sign that I'm seeing this, because this tells me that a patch request was attempted. And if I look back in my log, sure enough, patch journal entry 6 was fired, but it got a 404 error on not found. Okay, let's widen that so we can see that a little better. This is my status code, it's a 404, and this is the page that loads as a result of 404s in Sinatra. Okay, so this is good news. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy this, add it to my journal entries controller, and now I've got my patch form, except I know that this is going to be dynamic. So the same way I did before, I'm going to add ID and hello world. Let's see if we get a nice hello world if we refresh the page. I'm going to resubmit the form to the same place and see if we show up with a hello world. And there it is. This is good. Okay. Now, what's the job of this route or this action? What am I doing here? What should happen inside of this block? Anyone? Any thoughts? Am I still connected here? Can you hear me?
You would actually change the attributes of the journal entry.
Yeah, and so I'm going to say I'll put this into steps, because the first thing I actually need to do is find the journal entry. Because remember, we've just been given a request from the backend. This is a brand new action. I don't have that instance variable anymore. All right, so I need to find the journal entry. Then, as you just said, modify, which is, in this case, we'll say update the journal entry. And then I have to decide where I want to go. Correct location, I'll say. Or go to, I'll say redirect to, and then we can decide. Usually what we do is redirect to the show page of whatever was just created or modified. Cool. Yeah, today that's totally fine. We'll see you next time. And I'll redirect to, let's see, I think the show page is fine. I think that makes sense. Okay. So first I need to find the journal entry. What does that look like? Any thoughts?
Is that the same as line 27?
It's exactly the same as line 27. It's also the same as line 34. When I notice the same exact line of code executed more than once, what does that tell me? Something that should ring a bell in our heads. A helper method. Let's do it. Okay. What I'm actually going to do down here at the bottom is I'm going to create the helper method right inside of my journal entries controller. I'm actually going to put it inside of something called private, which loosely means that this is something we're not going to call anywhere else outside of this class. And so let's say we're going to call this method def set journal entry. And we've already written it, by the way. It's right here. Okay, there it is. That's it. It's that simple. When I invoke a method and its return value is an instance variable called journal entry, that thing is going to be available to me throughout the block, or in this case, the block where I declare it, and therefore still get passed along. So anywhere I had that line of code, I'm now just going to call set journal entry. Wait, we should have 3 of them, right? Oh, right here too. I moved it out of there. Set journal entry and set journal entry. That's great. Oh, that feels so much better. This looks so much cleaner than writing the exact same code over and over. Okay, so this feels good. Let's see. I suppose we could just make sure that worked. Ooh, so params is not subject to scope. That's a good question. Oh my gosh, what a great question. So you know what? Let's see what happens here. Let's put a binding. And can I just, where am I here? This is a show page. Well, the show page has it too, so let's go up to the show page. Save this and let's see what happens. Actually, no, I just want to go here. Okay, and let's look and see if, sure enough, if our params, okay, ID is 6, and at journal entry, okay, it's there. So I think the binding actually then feels better if it's down here. I'm going to refresh the page again. Now I'm going to catch it. Oh no. Okay, yeah, I got out of there, didn't I? Cool, and now I'm inside of here, and let's look at params. It's still there. And so what's happened? So params is not subject to scope, as Sushi is your question. Params is subject to scope. Okay, and so that may seem like a conflict, and it's such a great question. I love your question. So just so everyone's clear, Sushi saw that suddenly I'm inside of a block, inside of one of these method invocations, but I'm living inside of my application controller, or sorry, my journal entries controller, which inherits from application controller. And the answer to this question starts to get a little bit sort of technical. I mean, not so much that like you wouldn't know what's going on, but the question is right now, like, what is self? If I look, this is still Ruby. Remember, this is all these root libraries, whatever library you're using, whatever language you're using, you're still stuck in that language, right? And so scoping rules will typically come from the language, not from the library, although there might be some tweaks along the way here and there. So I'm inside of a Ruby library, Sinatra, okay, along with Rack, along with all these other gems that I've got loaded that I'm using. But this is still just Ruby, so I can always still just look at self. And self, in this case, notice, what is self? It's a journal entries controller object, an instance of the class journal entries controller. Here's journal entries controller. So notice that these things are method invocations, okay? And what's happening is Sinatra picks these invocations up and builds all this stuff. But how, like, where are we? They're inside of the journal entries controller class, right? And so right now, if I look at self, oh crap, there we go, it's too big. Self.class, I see it's journal entries controller. And so that's because I'm living inside of an instance of journal entries controller, or I should say because I'm inside of a journal entries controller method, that's why I still have access to this params. So params is made available to my journal entries controller class, and every time we send a new page refresh, we get a new instance of this class. So let me actually demonstrate that. If I exit this, and instead of binding.pry, I'm going to put a couple of put statements. I'll say, and this is getting kind of, if right now you're scratching your head and you're like, what in the world's going on? That's okay. But I'm just going to put self. And I'm going to make big like stars so we can tell where it is. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see it very well. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate that. Okay, there it is. And I'm just going to refresh the page. Excuse me. Refresh the page once. There's journal entry. There it is. There's my object. We can look at the number there. I'm going to refresh the page again. And let's see if it's too far apart. I need to get rid of all these warnings. They're annoying. Notice that it's a completely different instance of the journal's entry controller class. So there's still just plain old Ruby happening in the background. Okay? So we're declaring a plain old Ruby class, but it happens to inherit from application controller, which happens to inherit from Sinatra base. So I have a ton of extra functionality. But the rules and scoping still applies. So params is subject to scope. However, the scope here is accessible because I'm inside of the journal entries controller class, and I have an instance of the journal entries controller, which has been given access to params. Is that helpful, Sushi? Did that answer your question, or was that more confusing? Any questions about that? It's such a good question. Okay. In my scope, by the way, when I create this journal entry instance method, it's an instance of what class? Well, it's an instance of the journal entries controller class, and it's scoped to the instance that we're currently working with, which is why then that instance then passes that along, even though the instance, once the page refreshes, is gone. If I render, we're going to pass that information along to the view before it's gone. Okay. Because remember, these views are ERB files. They're kind of these strange mix of HTML and Ruby. And then once a page refresh happens, all my instance variables and all of my instances of these classes are gone, and a brand new one is fired up from the start. So it's like knocked down and rebuilt each time. Okay. Hopefully that makes some sense or shines a little bit of light on it. So when I set my journal entry, I do have access to params. And then even though this instance variable seems to be created down here in a helper method, which it is, it's an instance variable. What's the scope of an instance variable that's created inside of an instance method? It's scoped to the instance of the class. What class are we in? We're inside of journal entries controller class, scoped to this instance. That's where we are. We're inside of this block. We pass it along. We still have access, and it goes to ERB. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful. So now that I'm back in my block, I've got my journal entry, and how can I update it? Any thoughts? I'm just going to use active records methods to update my journal entry just like I always would. So I have this journal entry living in an instance variable now called journal entry. Okay? So the easiest, sort of shortest way to do this would be something like journal entry.update. Before I update it, let me just make darn sure that I have exactly what I want in my params. So I'm going to click on edit again to get to my form. And I'll add something to my entry. It's snowy. And that's fine. Whatever. Edit entry. Hopefully I should now hit this route or match this route, enter this block, set my journal, and catch on my binding. That's what I expect to happen. And I want to know what are my params. And sure enough, I still have, now I have this extra thing, method patch, I have content and ID. So let's see what happens if I try to just use mass assignment. Journal entry, journal entry dot update is my active record method to update the database with new information, params. Okay, I'm going to save that. I'm going to exit my, exit my binding. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Exit my binding there. And what just happened here? Good, good. And then I haven't redirected yet, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. Redirect to journal entries. And again, we already know how to do this. We're going to interpolate the journal entry ID .id. Okay, let's see what happens. So I'm going to go to journal entry 6, edit again. And let's see if this actually finally pushes through. And we will actually try to change.
We put an extra E on the journal entry that you just sent out.
Oh, cool. That's actually the British spelling, journali, or something like that. Just kidding. All right, so that's definitely going to cause a problem. Okay, but we didn't even get that far. We got an active record unknown attribute error at journal entry 6. Unknown attribute underscore method for journal entry. This is a very explicit error message. This is very helpful. And if we look back, remember that when I caught on my binding right there, I took a quick glance at my params and I kind of skimmed over this. I don't know if hopefully some of you noticed that there was this extra key value pair. An active record is having none of it. Why? Why is this a problem?
When you're trying to update the journal entry, it has no underscore method.
Exactly. Yeah, it does. There is no attribute. There's no, when we look up here, let's see if I can actually see it. Yeah, I guess I was hoping I can see like a little bit more of an explicit, actually active record issue here. There it is. So we see a begin transaction and an immediate rollback, and this is we know that this is a problem. I was hoping that the active record logger would show us a little bit more information. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't really, unfortunately, it doesn't show us any more than that, other than this is the error that we're getting right here. It doesn't know this attribute, and so we can't push it forward. And that's a good thing. We don't want to be able to mass assign with a bunch of attributes that don't exist. And so what we have to do is be a little bit more explicit. Okay, that's the bottom line. And there are multiple ways. You're going to learn some really good ways of doing this in Rails. Right now, we're going to do it rather manually. And instead, how can we fix this? Instead of just updating and pointing at params, how can I be more explicit with what I want to update? And the answer is I can just pass a hash with something like content params content. And did I give the user content? Did I give the user any other things to update within this form? I didn't, right? So there's only one thing to update. By the way, this is one argument that I'm passing, and Ruby allows me to omit the curlies. And so even though it doesn't necessarily look like it, this is a hash that I'm passing. And common sort of misconception is if I add something, suppose I had like a title or something like that, which I don't have, but just for the sake of demonstration, this is still one argument, even though it looks like two. Okay, this is one argument being passed. It's two key value pairs. It's actually one big hash, just like that. These are equivalent. But Ruby doesn't require that we use those external curlies, and so a lot of people think that looks like two arguments. It's only one. Okay. And now maybe, just maybe, when we go back to our form and refresh the page, we should see the old version and we should finally get, hopefully, this thing working. Today it's Tuesday and it's snowy in the Catskills. Catskills, okay? I'm gonna edit this entry and hold my breath and cross my fingers and hope that this thing worked. Today is Tuesday and it's snowy in the Catskills. There it is, success. This is exciting, okay? We've got some success happening here and we're loving it because we just added the ability to edit an entry. Besides that the styling here is terrible, we're pretty happy about the functionality thus far. Can anyone think of some things that we're definitely missing? In particular, with this route and this route, and especially this one, okay? There's some major things missing here. There are two big deals, and actually, we're not meeting requirements here right now. Can anyone think of what I'm talking about? Let's look at the spec file. If I split the spec file to the right, and I look through here, what I'm working on right now is the CRUD abilities where I should be able to ensure the belongs to resources routes for creating, reading, updating, destroying. So this is pending. I'm still working on them, right? I've done creating, reading, updating. I still need to destroy. But here's line 17. This is the problem. Also line 18. These two requirements here right now are not being met. Okay? So what I mean by that is there is nothing within these two routes to prevent a user, any user, from accessing this form and in turn editing this information. And so if I look at, for example, if I grab my database, crap, so how about if I just create a new, okay. So if I drop into tux, bundle exec tux, and I say journal entry.all, and I want to find one from a different user. So it looks like journal entry number 5 belonged to user number 4. So this is perfect. So what I could do right now in my browser, if I go to journal entries 5, edit, I can see the form. First of all, I mean, I can go all the way back. If I go just to the show page, there are multiple problems along the way here. If I don't own journal entry number 5, which I don't, I shouldn't be able to see a link to edit it, but I can. If I click the link, I certainly shouldn't be able to see a form to change it, but I can. And I definitely shouldn't be able to add 17 exclamation points because this isn't even this is not my journal entry, and I shouldn't be able to edit it, but I can. So this is what I mean when I say we have problems. So these are problems that are really important to solve. So I just encountered some problems. I could kind of write them down like right now, anyone can edit anyone else's journal entries. And finally, there's one other major problem, which is if I edit this link, or sorry, if I edit this entry, and I clear out my content entirely, and I submit it, I'm going to end up with a journal entry that has an empty content, which I don't want. I don't want to be able to create empty journal entries. Notice that there's no content showing anymore. It means I deleted it. Okay, so these are two major problems right now, and they are required that these things don't happen. Right, that's part of the requirements. Also, I can edit a journal entry to be blank. Okay, so I'm just going to say like major problems. Major problems. So I know I need to address these. And I'll actually just number them 1 and 2. Okay. So I have a note here from Sherry. You need to add an if journal entry statement, etc., current user. Yes, good. Okay, so Sherry is saying, look, we need to check that somebody's logged in. We need to check that they own this thing before they can edit it. And that's 100% correct. So, let's start with that. So the first place I think we should put that, I think that logic really goes, I shouldn't be able to see the form or actually edit something. So I think that logic belongs in both places. Let's first put it on the form. So what do I want to, you said something like if, whoops, I have to set my journal entry first. And then if journal entry dot user is equal to the current user. There we go. Then I want to show this edit form. Else, what in the world? What is that? What is capital else? What am I doing? Writing SQL? Else. And there we go. This is Ruby. Come on. Okay. Otherwise, what do I want to do? And like here, it depends. Like, so what has somebody just done? They've clicked a link. They've gotten to this route, or they've typed it into the browser. Either way. So where do I want to send them if this happens? And I think like honestly, it kind of depends on if they're logged in or not. So I could actually encapsulate this entire thing in another if statement. If logged in, if logged in. Then I want to go through this stuff, else, and otherwise I'm going to redirect them to welcome or to the root page. Okay, so that I feel good about that. If they're not logged in, they're going to the home page, right? Which says log in or sign up. So if they've hit line 41, they are logged in. Here they own it. That's great. Otherwise, I think we can just send it back to sort of their home page. And I can access that if I actually use double quotes, users, and then I can use my current user helper method to go to that particular page. Okay. So now what should happen is if I now go to journal entries 5 edit and I hit enter, I should enter. We should match this route. We'll set the journal entry. We'll make sure I'm logged in, which I am. Then we're going to check and see if I own this particular journal entry. I don't, so I should be redirected back to my home page. Let's see if that happens. As the server is thinking, and sure enough, Howard's show page. That's good news. Okay, I could basically apply very similar logic to my patch route. So after I set the journal entry, okay, now I'm going to do the same thing if logged in. And what are we already seeing here? Somebody, again, why would that correct to else like that? That's so silly. Again, we should have some bells ringing in our head. What do I mean by that? This is starting to get messy and kind of ugly looking. Else redirect to home. If I see this helper methods, I definitely want some helper methods here. This actually, I've got this. See, I didn't even, see, look at this. I already built this wrong. If logged in, oh no, that's fine. Now I just need my next line, which is the same one. Again, check if they own it. This is what happens if they do. And then else and else. And again, redirect them to their home page. Okay. So let's see. So just to be clear, I'm gonna see now. I won't even be able to see this form, which is good. And so I can't actually even test this out properly because there's no way I'm ever going to actually get to this form. I would need to use a different, like something like Postman or some tool that would allow me to submit a patch request exactly where I want. Right now, I have no way through my browser of even getting to that form in order to submit the patch request. So this is good news. I'm going to keep the logic here too. I think it does belong here. But we're going to need to add some helper methods here as well. And we are pretty much running out of time. I've definitely added more than I wanted to for my commits, but I'll go ahead and commit those afterward. I'm not going to do that right now. Instead, let me know, does anybody have any questions right now about anything we've done today? Anything on your mind that doesn't make sense? Any questions? Everybody feeling okay? So we basically have added edit and update functionality. We added a helper method. We definitely need to work on our user interface and our links and things like that. So I think those are good. And adding a helper method to clean up this mess is going to be helpful as well. So those are going to be some good next steps for us. And then finally putting it all together. Once we've cleaned this up a little bit and we add a delete functionality, I think that will pretty much be, we'll pretty much have our requirements done. So we're really getting there. I think with one more session, we should have this done and at least have something we could submit if we wanted to. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you all for your participation. Thank you for your questions. Hope to see you all again soon. I don't remember if I put another one up for this week, but I'm going to add another one this week anyway so that we can get this done. I'd like to get this finished up. So I will be adding another study group if it's not already there, so keep an eye out for that. I'm going to stop this one.